This is Yoko Taro. He is a video game developer. Those who know him and his works will look upon his twisted yet perversely cute visage with the utmost admiration. Those who do not know his works, however, might assume he is the archetype of a pretentious auteur, but that assumption lies at the heart of Taro's genius. One can argue that when it comes to subverting expectations, there is nobody in the video game medium that does it as consistently and as meaningfully as Yoko Taro. Where many authors will fail in their subversion by making predictable narrative twists, or just by relying on shock value, Taro's subversion generally inspires reflection and spiritual growth in his audience. Take his most popular game, NieR Automata. The false assumption people might make about this game, based on its marketing material, is that it is just a simple action game with sexy androids. In reality, the game betrays these and many other assumptions with a series of dark and emotionally devastating events, ones that leave the gamer disoriented and depressed. But thankfully, Taro carefully crafts the story and the gameplay to empower the gamer, to help them find a sustaining sense of meaning amongst the chaos. For myself, he did this so successfully that it inspired my current love for philosophy, a love that was further fostered by the game that preceded Automata, NieR Replicant. Though it doesn't succeed to the same extent that Automata does in my opinion, its story and gameplay still challenged assumptions more successfully than most other forms of media. A few months ago, when I reflected on how much those games meant to me and my life path, I started to feel a sense of guilt, because I had not played the game that the NieR franchise spun out of, Drakengard. I was always aware of Drakengard and had a general idea of how NieR spawned out of it, but I didn't know anything about the game itself. What inspired me to finally try it out was the fact that, well, my wife actually had a copy of the game, but more importantly, I wanted to feel that Yoko Taro magic again. In an era where a lot of games can feel uninspired and predictable, I needed a Yoko Taro game to challenge me, to remind me of the joy and the pain that comes with true unpredictability. And wouldn't you know it, Drakengard betrayed my expectations in the greatest way possible. Drakengard sucks. And it's genius.
What?
I don't think I have felt this kind of conflicting emotion about anything in my life, except, I don't know, maybe Keanu Reeves' acting ability? He's good, but he sucks. But he's good, but he sucks. But he's good. Okay, look, here's the bottom line. Drakengard makes a very strong artistic statement about the action game genre. Much like Spec Ops: The Line, it makes the gamer reflect on why so many of the most popular games are ones that involve you killing lots of people. This is not because Drakengard wishes to condemn games where you kill people, not at all. Instead, it's to help the gamer cultivate a critical eye, to make them think about why they enjoy what they enjoy. The ultimate purpose of this is to help the gamer determine how mindless their enjoyment of these types of games is, and more disturbingly, to determine how different their mindless killing is from the mindless killing committed by the avatar. Maybe they will be comfortable with how far the separation is, but maybe they won't be. The most perverse yet genius thing that inspires this deep reflection, though, is the fact that the gameplay is so bland. And when I say bland, I'm talking like McDonald's fries that have been sitting out in the open for 24 hours. But paradoxically, the value of the game's unique artistic statement wouldn't have been as strong or as memorable if the gameplay wasn't repetitive and monochromatic. Today, I want to look back at Drakengard and analyze why its central message is so unique and so clever, and why the gameplay needed to be bad in order to make that message more profound. But before I do, I am happy to inform everybody that the majority of this video is spoiler-free. If you have never played Drakengard, you can watch most of this video up until a point where I give ample warning for you to switch off. Now, before I jump into my analysis, let us begin with a summary of the game's setting and opening moments. The game takes place on an alternate form of Earth called Midgard, which is literally just Europe flipped upside down. I'm dead serious. On Midgard, two factions are at war with one another. One is a religious monarchy known as the Empire, and the other is a collection of hundreds of small provinces called the Union. The Empire is in league with a religious organization known as the Cult of the Watchers, both of whom are seeking out 4 magical artifacts known as seals within the Union's territories. 3 of these seals exist in 3 temples, and the 4th seal is a goddess named Furiae. Early on, we do not know the significance of these seals. We only know that if the Empire destroys them, there would be cataclysmic consequences. You play as a soldier fighting on the Union side of the war, a character named Caim. No, not the cool Caim. There you go! Caim is the former prince of a small kingdom within the Union. He also so happens to be the brother of the aforementioned Furiae. Recently, Caim and Furiae suffered the loss of their parents, who were killed by dragons that were in service to the Empire. Following this traumatic event, Caim takes it upon himself to fight alongside the Union to protect his sister and the seals. The game opens outside of Caim's castle, where he is fighting back an invasion by the Empire. At one point, he is informed that Empire forces have taken the castle and are converging on Furiae's location. On his way to help his sister, he becomes grievously wounded, but lucky for him, he finds salvation in the least likely of places. Within the castle keep, Caim finds a talking dragon nailed to the ground. Despite his newfound hatred for dragons, spurred by the death of his parents, he knows of a way to use the dragon to stave off his imminent death. He proposes to the dragon that they engage in a magical spell known as a pact. By binding their souls together, they will not only be able to heal all their wounds, but use their combined power to fight back the Empire's forces. Despite the dragon's equal distaste for humans, it agrees to the pact, in turn healing their injuries and allowing them to save the day. However, we quickly learn that every human who engages in a pact must pay some sort of price. For Caim, the pact takes away his ability to speak, but to him, it is a small price to pay if it means his goals are fulfilled. From this point on, Caim and the dragon work together with the Union to fight back the Empire in an attempt to save Midgard. But as we slowly find out, there are many sinister motivations underlying Caim's stated ambition. Motivations that might not be too dissimilar to the gamers. Now, in order to contextualize why the story of Drakengard succeeds, I do need to explain why that was only possible thanks to the game's approach to game design. Though I just made it pretty obvious that I think the gameplay is bad, I will ironically begin my argument by playing devil's advocate. So a lot of people might not know this, but Drakengard belongs to a niche but beloved genre of games originating out of Japan. It is what is known as a musou game. A musou game tends to put you in an open area where you hack and slash hundreds and hundreds of enemies using multiple kinds of weapons. The aim is to make the player feel like a hero of unmatched power, which is what musou translates to in English, unmatched. On top of that, clearing an entire map's worth of enemies with relative ease is supposed to give the player a feeling of relaxation and mindless entertainment, which I can honestly understand the appeal of. One of my favorite game series is Just Cause, which isn't a hack and slash, but is a mindless action game where you clear an entire map of enemy bases and try to do it in the most efficient and the most obnoxious way possible. It's that kind of entertainment that musou games like Dynasty Warriors and Hyrule Warriors and, well, any game with the word warriors in it, it's that kind of entertainment those games try to imitate. I will be perfectly honest, for the first hour of Drakengard, I was on board with that gameplay formula. No, it's not mind-blowingly great, but it was engaging. Plus, the game had some variation to maintain that positive sentiment for a while. Aside from the hack and slash levels, there were levels where you would hop aboard your dragon and engage in aerial combat. I initially had a lot of fondness for these sections because they reminded me of a game that I was obsessed with when I was 6 years old. That game was called Drakengard Order of the Flame. I thought that game was the coolest effing thing back in the day simply because it allowed you to get on a dragon, fly around, and rain hell down from above. Then it let you get off and school fools with your weapons and your magic. If I knew back then that a game like Drakengard existed, it would have been my favorite game of all time, because there wouldn't be these annoying things called quests and puzzles getting in the way like in Drakengard Order of the Flame. It would have just been kill, 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 die, 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 24/7 non-stop, which would have been like crack for my 6-year-old brain. So I get the appeal of musou games, and I don't fault those who enjoy them. The problem with Drakengard's approach to this type of gameplay is that everything you do in the game is a carbon copy of what happens in the first hour. It is just hacking down mobs of enemies on the ground and blowing enemies out of the sky. Not only that, there is virtually no strategy involved in how you combat most of these enemies. With your melee weapon, you just press square 90% of the time and occasionally use the triangle button for a magic attack. And when you play the levels where you fly the dragon, you can clear most of the sections just by pressing R1 to dodge and then hold down the square button to do a lock-on attack. This is all Drakengard is for the majority of the game. Now, I already know some people are going to say, but the game has 65 weapons that you can obtain. That's some variety right there. Yes, fine, that's true. The game encourages you to use more than just one weapon, so you can not only add some variety to the combat encounters, but level up the weapons and make them more powerful. And plus, the weapons and the special magic effects that come along with them bear a great deal of variation. It is undeniably cool, seeing rocks or swords fall from the sky, or having fireballs spin around you. But here's the problem. The time spent to get these weapons and level them up is not worth it. Because for like the 30 hours I spent with this game, the most efficient weapon, by far, was the one you start the game with. Yes, the dragon sword and the scythe were somewhat better, but it took me 30 hours of grinding just to get those weapons. So ultimately, there was no point. But here's the kicker, right? I wanted to get the game's quote-unquote true ending. The ending that leads right into the events of the first NieR game. How do you get that ending? You have to get each of the game's 65 weapons and then grind them to max level. For each weapon, you have to kill roughly 1,000 enemies before it reaches max level. So 65 weapons times 1,000 equals 65,000 enemies killed. Not to mention all the soldiers you killed using a fully leveled up weapon. If you're trying to do a completionist run of Drakengard, you will have killed around 100,000 bad guys. I don't know if I've killed that many people in my 20 years playing Halo online. Yet, because I'm an idiot, because I'm such a big fan of Yoko Taro, I spent many hours trying to get that ending. And the repetitiveness, the mindlessness, the boundless slaughter. It numbed my brain to the point that I felt like I had gone insane. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part, which is ironically the game's most genius element, was how the game's story takes advantage of this insanity-inducing gameplay. Yoko Taro conceived of Drakengard when he reflected on all of the most popular games releasing at the time. They all involved killing, a fact that is still true about games released today. Originally, he thought that somebody who took great pleasure in killing hordes of people must naturally be insane. So he wanted to explore what differences there are, if there are any, between an insane character that kills and a gamer killing NPCs. Thus, he conceived of Caim, a protagonist that we are led to believe has good intentions at first, but who we slowly suspect might only be motivated to commit mindless slaughter. Slaughter that you, the gamer, commits. Now, intuitively, you and I can tell that there are big differences between killing real people and killing digital NPCs. Obviously. But what Drakengard does is make Caim and the gamer participate in so many disturbing events that they feel compelled to articulate those differences to themselves, in order to try and quell those feelings of disturbance. I would like to examine the way Drakengard births that reflection in the gamer through the game's story, but before I do, I will issue that promised spoiler warning. If you have always wanted to play Drakengard but never have, now is the time to bookmark this video and come back when you're done. You have been warned. After the game immerses you in its repetitive gameplay loop, the story adopts a deconstructionist approach, where things you would expect to happen in an action game suffer a complete reversal. To summarize, the story is constructed in such a way to make you want to stop playing the game. The first and most obvious way it does this is with the NPC dialogue. Most of them, but primarily the dragon, chastise you for killing so many people. And when you don't stop, they wax philosophical about how wretched and unforgivable humanity is.
Must you slaughter so many? Please! Even the Empire's soldiers deserve our mercy. Does the spilling of the blood of so many amuse you so? Doesn't slaughter calm your soul?
Do you feel like a hero yet?
To make matters worse, the game's story features Caim and the Union consistently losing virtually every battle they engage in. Even though there are a handful of victories, those victories are either immediately negated or followed up with an even bigger failure. This is not typically what you play an action game for. You typically play to win and feel heroic. Now, it isn't uncommon for Yoko Taro's stories to feature protagonists experiencing perpetual failure, but at least in those other stories, Taro reminds us that one can create a sustaining meaning amongst the chaos if you have people you love supporting you on your journey. In this game, your companions are some of the most wretched and depraved characters I've ever encountered in fiction. Of course, with one or two of them, you don't find this out right away. When you meet characters like Leonard, for example, you fight alongside them for a while and build a bond with them. You get the impression that he is a generally well-meaning individual. Then, the game gives you the option to go back and play a chapter where you learn more about who Leonard was before you met him. In his case, well, I can't say out loud what kind of person he is without risking demonetization. Let's just say if you had a child and you saw Leonard driving around your neighborhood in a white van handing out candy, you would call the cops. Yeah. And this continues for almost all the other characters in the game. There's a fairy who makes the edgelords over at 4chan look like Mormons. There's Ariosh, who eats children in order to cope with the loss of her own progeny. Oh, and did I mention, Caim's sister is in love with him. After a while, the mind-numbing gameplay combined with these deeply unsettling characters and story threads started to make me ask out loud, why am I playing this? Why do I continue to control Caim, despite his successive failure, despite his insanity? Why do I keep playing a game that is doing everything it can to make me not want to play? The most disturbing question, though, that I did not have an immediate answer for, was, why do I still find the story so compelling? Thankfully, I found my answer in the game's multiple endings. Eventually, we learn why the Empire wanted to destroy the seals. Apparently, doing this would release a variety of magical orbs known as Seeds of Resurrection. Any being that enters these seeds would transform into a tool of the gods, and then carry out the gods' will. That will being the desire to wipe humanity's existence from the face of the earth. But why would they want to do this? Well, look at the destruction you have wrought. Look at the tens of thousands of lives you have taken. And for what? When I learned this, I felt the greatest dissonance between myself and Caim. I knew in my heart of hearts that despite the fact that this game turned me into an unconscious square button pushing automaton, no pun intended, I knew that I did what I did to save the world. Not because I enjoyed killing people. Not because I identified with Caim in any way beyond the mindlessness. And lucky for me, I found validation for this belief in one of the game's 5 endings, specifically Ending A. In this ending, Caim and the dragon save the world by having the dragon voluntarily become a seal. Moreover, Caim develops a newfound respect for the dragon race, as does the dragon for humans. That respect is rooted in the strength of their wills to push through hell in service of a goal greater than either of their selfish desires. I identified with this ending the most because it answered that previous question. Why do I find the story so compelling? Well, in keeping with the NieR games, the endings ask us to find meaning amongst the chaos, to justify why we play this hell simulator and why we enjoy it, if we even do. I played to the end to see if I could find that meaning, to find the assurance that I wasn't insane, and I found it with Ending A. But still, that was just the ending that I identified with. Ultimately, Yoko Taro's multiple endings invite the gamer to reflect on their enjoyment of Drakengard, their motivations, and their personal belief in the value of humanity. Maybe your motivations align like mine did with Ending A, but maybe they align more with the more pessimistic endings, where the world ends or Caim just fights for eternity. Whatever ending you identify with the most, you have to ask yourself, what does that say about you? Or maybe you ignore that difficult self-reflection and say Ending E is your favorite because it leads into NieR. Hooray for sexy robots.